Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, ang topic natin today is about transaction processing system. I know you are already familiar with this topic since we already discussed this TPS during our midterm topics. Nagkaroon na tayo ng brief overview about transaction processing system. So kung babalikan natin, ano ba itong transaction processing system? This TPS supports daily business operations with numerous reports, documents, and messages for users throughout the organization. So the transaction processing system is central to the overall function of the information system by converting economic events into financial transactions, and also it is central to the overall function of the information system through recording financial transactions in the accounting records. Like for instance, we have journals and ledgers, and then distribute essential financial information to operations personnel to support the daily operations of the organization. This transaction processing system, guys, it deals with the business events that occur frequently. So madalas nangyayari ito within the organization, yung mga transactions, no, within the transaction processing system. So, yung mga business events that occur frequently, so in a given day, for instance, di ba, ang isang organization, they may process thousands of transactions. To deal with it efficiently, dapat yung mga similar types of transactions are grouped together into the transaction system. So, kung maalala ninyo, during our previous discussion na yung TPS natin, it consists of 3 transaction cycles. First, we have the revenue cycle. Second, we have the expenditure cycle. And then third, we have the conversion cycle. So, each cycle captures and, It captures and processes different types of financial transaction. So, later on, i-discuss natin to sila isa-isa. Ngayon, ano naman itong financial transaction? So, bakit natin kailangang i-discuss ulit itong financial transaction? So, based doon sa definition natin ng transaction processing system kanina, so the TPS application process financial transaction. So, through TPS, these financial transactions are processed. So, yung definition naman ng ating financial transaction, na-define na rin natin ito previously, di ba? Pero balbalikan natin ulit. So, a financial transaction is an economic event that affects the assets and equities of the firm, is reflected in its account, and is measured in monetary terms. So, similar types of transactions are grouped together into 3 transaction cycles. So, ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina, the expenditure cycle, the conversion cycle, and the revenue cycle. So, the most common financial transactions, usually these are economic exchanges with external parties. So, for instance, this includes yung mga sale of goods or services natin, yung mga purchases of inventory, mga discharge of financial transactions, and the receipt of cash on account from customers. So, these financial transactions also include certain internal events such as, for instance, we have the depreciation of fixed asset, the application of labor, raw materials, and overhead to the production process, and the transfer of inventory from one department to another. So, bakit kasali sa TPS itong financial transactions natin? Since these financial transactions are common business events that occur regularly. For instance, thousands of transactions of a particular type may occur daily. Anong mga transactions? Kunyari, yung mga sales to customers. Diba? Kung maraming sales, so volume yung transactions regarding sales. So, it occurs regularly yung mga sales transactions natin. So, to deal efficiently with the sales volume, so, business organization or different business firms, they group similar types of transactions into the transaction cycle. So, these 3 transaction cycles, guys, no, it processes most of the firm's economic activity. So, through grouping it into the expenditure cycle, the conversion cycle, and the revenue cycle. So these three cycles exist in all types of businesses, no? Not only yung mga profit-making na mga organization, kundi pati na rin yung mga not-for-profit na mga organizations natin. For instance na lang, di ba? In every business, they incurs expenditures in exchange of their resources. No, in exchange for the resources. So, nandyan yan siya sa expenditure cycle since we are talking about expenses. And then sa isang organization naman, sa mga organization naman, they provides value added through its products or services. So, kung nagpo-provide tayo ng value added through its products and services, kasali yan siya sa conversion cycle natin. And then, paano naman kapag yung isang business organization, they receives revenue from outside sources. So, nandyan yan siya sa ating revenue cycle. So, isa-isahin natin ito later on. So, kung makikita natin dito sa figure natin, no? This is the relationship between the transaction cycles. So, as you can see in this figure regarding relationship between transaction cycles, so isa-isahin natin ito. Okay, kung makikita natin dito sa figure ng slide, no? Meron tayong labor, materials, and physical plant dito. Ito sa una. So, in every business activities, guys, no, it begins with the acquisition of materials. It begins with the application of property. And also, it begins with the acquisition of labor in exchange for cash. So, under this transaction, it is under the expenditure cycle. So, this figure shows the flow of cash from the organization to the various providers of these three resources, no? So, nabanggit ko kanina, yung labor, materials, and physical plant natin. So, most expenditures transactions are based on the credit relationship between the trading parties. So, the actual disbursement of cash takes place, no, at some point after the receipt of the goods or services. So, maybe days or even weeks, no, may pass between these two events. So, ano yung mangyayari dito? From the system's perspective, syempre, these transactions has two parts, no? First, we have the physical component. So, ano yung kasali dyan sa physical component? Syempre, yung acquisition of the goods. And then, the second part is the financial component. So, ano naman yung kasali dyan? Syempre, since we are talking about financial component, meron dito yung cash disbursement to the supplier. So, a separate subsystem, no, of the cycle processes each component. So, the major subsystem of the expenditure cycle, syempre, it is outlined in this figure. So, ano ba ito under sa expenditure cycle subsystems natin? So, first, we have the purchasing accounts payable. So, dito sa purchases accounts payable system natin, so this system recognizes the need to acquire physical inventory such as na lang yung mga raw materials natin, and then places an order with the vendor. So when the goods are received, the purchases system records that event by increasing inventory and establishing an accounts payable to be paid at a later date. So under naman dito sa cash disbursement system, no, when the obligation is created in the purchases system is due, 'di ba kanina dun sa purchases accounts payable, diba? Kunwari, the acquire inventory. And then, through the purchases system, it records the event and then, ano ba yung kanina? Yung sinabi ko. It records the event by increasing the inventory and establishing an account payable to be paid at a later date. So, dito nasa tayo sa cash disbursement system. So, when the obligation is created in the purchases system is due, so ibig sabihin, demandable na siya, kailangan na siyang bayaran, so the cash disbursement system authorizes the payment. So, after it authorizes the payment, it disburses the funds to the vendor and then records the transaction by reducing the cash and accounts payable accounts. And then how about this payroll system? No? Under the payroll system naman, the payroll system collects labor usage data for each employee. It computes the payroll and disburses paychecks to the employees. So, conceptually guys, this payroll is a special case. Bakit special case purchases itong payroll natin and cash disbursement system? Because of the accounting complexities associated with payroll. Kasi nga, most firms have separate system for payroll processing. Then, how about this last part, this fixed asset system natin? So, yung organization's fixed asset system, guys, it processes transactions pertaining to the acquisition, maintenance, and disposal of its fixed assets. So, these are relatively permanent items, no, that collectively often represents the organization's largest financial investment. For example, of fixed assets include, kung maalala ninyo, di ba? Land, buildings, furnitures, machinery, mga motor vehicles, and many more. So, yan yung under sa expenditure cycles natin. We have the purchases accounts payable system. We have the cash disbursement system. We have the payroll system. And then lastly, we have the fixed asset system. How about naman dito sa conversion cycle? So, this conversion cycle is composed of two major subsystems. First, we have the production system, and second, we have the cost accounting system. So, the production system, guys, it involves the planning, the scheduling, and control of physical product through the manufacturing process. So, it also includes determining raw materials requirements and then authorizing the work to be performed and release of raw materials into production and directing the movement of the work in process through its various stages of manufacturing. Okay, so in this conversion cycle, no, the cost of the accounting system monitors the flow of cost of information related to production. So information in this system produces is used for inventory valuation, budgeting, cost control, performance reporting, and management decisions such as make or buy decision. So in this conversion cycle, no, yung mga manufacturing firms natin, they convert raw materials into finished products through formal conversion cycle operations. So the conversion cycle is not usually formal and observable in service and retailing establishments. So usually makikita natin yan sa mga manufacturing firms. So, but still, no, yung mga service and retailing establishments natin, still they engage in conversion cycle activities, no, that culminate in the development of the saleable product or service. So, these activities may include yung mga pag-ready natin ng mga products and services for the market, and then the allocation of resources such as yung mga depreciation natin, building amortization, prepaid expenses to the proper accounting period. So, however, no, unlike in the manufacturing firms, yung mga merchandising companies natin do not process these activities through formal conversion cycle subsystems. Kaya nga dito sa conversion cycle, mostly makikita talaga natin ito, no? Mas makikita natin yung process talaga ng pag-convert ng raw materials into finished products sa ating mga manufacturing firms. But still again, gaya ng sabi ko, dun sa mga service and retailing establishments, still nag-engage sila sa conversion cycle activities. Gaya ng sabi ko, paano sila mag-engage sa conversion cycle activities, sa pag-ready nila ng mga products and services for the market, and then pag-allocate nila ng mga resources such as sa depreciation, sa building amortization, and prepaid expenses to the proper accounting period. And many more pa syempre ng mga activities. Pero yun yung usual. Okay? How about naman dito tayo sa revenue cycle? So, in this revenue cycle, yung mga organization natin, mga firm natin, they sell their finished goods to customers through the revenue cycle. Syempre, dito sa revenue cycle, it involves processing cash sales, credit sales, and receipt of cash following a credit sale. So in this revenue cycle transactions, it also have a physical and a financial component which are processed separately. So kung makikita natin yung under dito sa revenue cycle subsystems natin, we have the sales order processing and the cash receipts. So, ano ba itong sales order processing? So, the majority of business sales are made on credit and involves tasks such as preparing sales order. It also involves yung pag-grant natin ng credit, pag-ship natin ng products, or pag-render of a service natin to the customer, no? And then pag-bill natin ng customer, and also pag-record natin ng mga transactions in the accounts like accounts receivable, inventory, expenses, and sales. So dito yung sales order processing natin. How about naman dito sa cash receipts natin? So for credit sales natin, some period of time, kunyari days or weeks, passes between the point of sale and the receipt of cash. So under the cash receipts processing includes collecting cash, depositing cash in the bank, and recording these events in the accounts, no, like the accounts receivable and cash. So yan yung relationship between the transaction cycles natin under the expenditure cycle, conversion cycle, and revenue cycle natin. Okay, before we proceed with the next slide, no, so bigyan ko kayo ulit ng example regarding dito sa tatlo. For instance, dito sa expenditure cycles natin, yung purchases, accounts payable system natin. Supposedly, kunyari, in a manufacturing company, it needs raw materials for production. So, the purchasing department identifies the need for raw materials, and then they create a purchase requisitions and then send it to the purchasing manager. So, the manager then select a vendor, no? It creates a purchase order and then sends it to the vendor. So, upon receipt of the raw material, the receiving department inspect them and verifies the delivery against the purchase order. So, once verified, the accounts payable department receives the vendor invoice, matches it with the purchase order and receiving report, and prepares payment. So for example, if the company needs steel to manufacturing car parts, the purchasing cycle starts when the production department identifies the need for steel and ends when the accounts payable departments pays the steel supplier. No? Under naman sa cash disbursement system natin, dito sa expenditure cycle, so after the accounts payable department approves the invoice and prepares the payment, so it sends the payment details to the finance department. So the finance department natin then prepares checks or initiates electronic payments to the vendor. For example na lang, if the steel supplier sends an invoice for 100,000, so yung finance department natin, it will disperse 100,000 from the company's bank account to the supplier. How about naman sa payroll system natin? So, consider natin yung scenario where the company has employees who work in the production department. So, the payroll cycle begins with employees recording their hours work or reporting their salaries. So, the payroll department then calculates each employee's wages, deducts taxes, and other withholdings. And then, they will issue paychecks or initiates direct deposits. For example, kapag yung employee natin in the production departments works 40 hours in a week, so yung payroll department natin, they will calculate their wages based on their hourly rate, no? And then issues a paycheck for the corresponding amount. And lastly, how about yung expenditure cycle natin sa fixed asset, no? Supposedly sa company, no, they purchase new machinery to improve its manufacturing process. So the fixed asset cycle begins with the identification of the need for new machinery. So the purchasing department then initiates the procurement process to acquire the machinery. So once acquired, the machinery is recorded as fixed asset. And yung cost nito, it will be capitalized. So over time, the machinery depreciates, and then the fixed asset account, yung fixed asset accounting natin, no, yung fixed asset accounting department natin records the depreciation expense. No, for instance, kapag yung company natin bumili sila ng new conveyor belt, no, sa kanilang manufacturing process worth 250,000. So yung fixed asset department natin, they will record the purchases and then starts depreciating the asset over its useful life. So yung example natin sa expenditure cycle. So how about naman sa conversion cycle natin? no? So, under this conversion cycle, yung example natin dito sa production planning and control. So, let's say na lang sa isang company, no, nagplan sila na mag-manufacture ng 1,000 car parts. So the production planning cycle involves forecasting demand, no, scheduling the production and coordinating resources such as labor, materials and equipment. For example, the production manager schedules shifts, no, allocates yung raw materials natin and ensure that the production runs smoothly to meet customer demand. How about doon sa cost accounting natin? So, in the cost accounting cycle natin, yung company natin, itatrack nila and analyze yung cost associated with the manufacturing car parts. So, this includes the direct materials, example, yung steel, direct labor, yung wages of the line workers natin, and then yung manufacturing overhead natin, kunyari, yung mga factory rent, utilities, and etc. So, for instance, yung cost na na-compute ng accountant natin, no, i-calculate niya na yung cost of producing 1,000 car parts, no, by summing up the cost of raw materials, labor, and overhead, syempre. So, under this conversion cycle, syempre, through this two subsystem, the production planning and control, and then the cost accounting system, the different manufacturing companies, the different manufacturing firms natin, 'di ba, they can convert raw materials into finished products through formal conversion cycle operations kasi nakapag-plan na sila, nakapag-cost na sila. So, yun yung under dyan sa conversion cycle natin. How about naman dito sa revenue cycle na example natin? For example, dito sa sales order processing, no? Kunyari, meron tayong customer, they place an order for 100 car parts, no? The sales order processing cycle begins with the customer submitting an order, no? Which is entered, syempre, into the company's sales system. So, the company then checks the inventory availability and then they will confirm the order and generate an invoice for the customer. For example, the sales representative, i-enter niya yung customer order into the system. And then, yung warehouse manager natin, i-verify niya if there are enough car parts in the stock to fulfill the order of our customer. And then, lastly, dito sa cash receipts natin, under the revenue cycle, no, after the customer receive the car parts, syempre, they will make a payment to the company. So, the cash receipt cycles involve dito yung receiving and recording of payment from the customer. For example na lang, yung customer natin, they will send a check for the invoice amount, and then the accounts receivable department, they will gonna records the payment and updates the customer's account balance. So, in summary, no, kung makikita natin dito sa mga example kanina na nabanggit ko, no, makikita natin on how the various transaction cycles interact within an organization's operations. So, from acquiring resources and producing goods to selling products and collecting payments. So, each cycle plays a crucial role, guys, no, in the overall functioning of the business and contributes to its success, no. So importante, no, yung relationship between the subsystem of the transaction cycles. Okay, next slide tayo. Sabi dito, each cycle has two subsystem. Okay, saan siya, guys? Kung makikita nyo, pag-download ko nung slide natin, medyo nasira pala yung PowerPoint. Okay, basahin ko na lang, no? So, each cycle has two subsystems. So, under the expenditure cycle, time lag between the two due to credit relations with suppliers, we have the physical component like the acquisition of goods. So, dito sa financial component natin or physical component, no, acquisition of goods. So, ano ba ito siya? So, consider na lang natin sa isang retail company that needs to replenish its inventory electronics. So, yung physical component of the expenditure cycle, syempre, it involves activities such as identifying the need for new inventory, sa pag-select ng suppliers, creating purchase orders, pag-receive ng goods, and syempre, yung pag-inspect natin ng quality, no, ng goods na yan. So, for example, yung purchasing department natin, they will identify that the inventory of smartphone is running low. So they select a supplier based on factors like price and reliability. And then they will create a purchase order for a certain quantity of smartphones, no? And then after that, they will receive the shipment and inspect the phones to ensure that these phones meet the quality standards of the company, no? How about sa financial component ng ating expenditure cycle? So, under dito, yung cash disbursements to supplier. So, after receiving the goods, the company owes payment to the supplier. So, however, there is often time no na may lag between between receiving the goods and making the payment due to credit arrangement with suppliers. So, the financial component of the expenditure cycle, it involves activities such as approving invoices, processing payments, and dispersing funds. So for instance, the accounts payable department, they receives the invoices from suppliers and then verifies it against the purchase order and receipt of the goods and then process the payment. So the payment is typically made within the agreed credit terms. So ano yung mga agreed credit terms? For instance, no, it may be 30 days, 60 days or longer. Depende na yan sa mapag-usapan ng company and then its suppliers. How about naman yung two subsystem no under the conversion cycle? So first we have the production system, the planning, scheduling and control of the physical product through manufacturing process. So consider natin sa isang manufacturing company that produces automobiles. The production system involves planning the production schedule, then scheduling resources such as labor and machinery, and controlling the manufacturing process to ensure the efficiency and quality. For example na lang, yung production manager natin, it creates a production schedule based on customers' demand and then assign niya yung workers to different tasks on the assembly line and then i-monitor nila yung progress of the production to identify kung may mga bottlenecks ba or issue that need to be addressed sa production. Okay? And then under the conversion cycle, we have the last one here, the cost accounting system. Monitors the flow of cost of information related to production. So the cost accounting system, it tracks and analyzes the costs associated with the production of goods. So maybe this includes direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead costs. So for example, the cost accountant calculates the cost per units of the automobiles by summing up the cost of raw materials, labors, and overhead and then dividing by the number of units produced. And lastly guys, ito na yung last topic natin under the revenue cycle, we have the physical component like sales order processing. For instance na lang sa isang company na nagsasell ng mga office furniture, yung physical component of the revenue cycle, it involves yung pag-process ng customer's order, pag-fulfill ng mga order na yan, and pag-deliver ng products or services to the customers. For example na lang yung sales team natin. When they receive an order from a customer for 50 office chairs, syempre, they will enter the order into the system and then they will check the inventory availability and coordinate with the warehouse to pick, pack, and ship the chairs to the customer. And then lastly, we have the financial component of the revenue cycle and we have the cash receipts. So after ma-deliver yung products or services, the company will expect to receive payment from the customer. Pero there may be time lag between the delivery of the goods and receiving the payment, syempre due to the credit arrangement with the customers. Gaya ng kanina, nandoon din tayo kanina. Doon sa kanina, 'di ba, may mga time lag na nabanggit kanina doon sa nauna. Pero under this financial component of the revenue cycle, syempre, yung revenue cycle natin, it involves activities such as invoicing customers, tracking accounts receivables, and collecting payments. For instance, yung accounts receivable department natin, they will send an invoice to the customer for the 50 office chairs. They will record the sale in the accounting system and follows up with the customer to ensure the timely payment. So, magkabaliktad lang yung scenario dito kanina. Diba? Kung makikita nyo doon sa expenditure cycle kanina na nabanggit doon sa financial component of the cash disbursement to the supplier, and then dito naman sa revenue cycle, financial component regarding cash receipts. Syempre doon sa financial component under the expenditure cycle, yung time lag dito, 'di ba? Kanina nabanggit ko na may time lag Ano ba yung sabi ko kanina? May time lag sa pag-receive ng goods and making payments due to credit arrangement. So dito, sino ba yung may kwan dito? May utang dito. Siyempre, ikaw yung may utang, may time lag sa pagbayad mo at pag-receive ng goods doon sa expenditure cycle. Pero dito naman sa revenue cycle, syempre, may time lag doon sa accounts receivable mo, 'di ba? Sa pag-deliver mo ng goods at pag-receive ng bayad ng customer natin. So, yun lang yun, magkabaliktad lang na scenario. Ikaw kanina doon sa expenditure cycle, ikaw yung magbabayad. Accounts payable mo yung may time lag doon. And then dito naman sa financial component ng ating revenue cycle, dito naman sa accounts receivable time lag naman. Okay, so in summary no, dito sa ating mga subsystems no, under the expenditure cycle, conversion cycle, the revenue cycle no, each cycle consists of physical and financial components that are interconnected and essential for the smooth operation of the business. So, yung mga example natin dito kanina, it illustrates no on how organizations manage the flow of goods and services, no? And the financial transaction, syempre, to ensure the efficiency, the accuracy, and the profitability of the organization. Okay? So, yan na yung topic natin today, guys.